to be an anti-warrior strategy that some people adopted, but perhaps not to the degree that we've seen from Roger. You know, these names of the deck do not quite do them justice. Death Rattle Mech Hunter is not what that deck looks like on ladder. There's so much extra greed packed in there with, you know, Undertaker and Cairn Bloodhoof and all this insane extra stuff. Summoner Mage, again, as greedy as you can build it. Power of Creation in there. Hex Lord Malakras thrown in there as well. Correct. It's, yeah, you say it really opens up the whole series. It really just turns the whole series on its head. If Tyler's Warrior wins, if basically anyone's Control Warrior wins against Roger, his lineup's in serious trouble. This reminds me an awful lot of what we saw Frozen do a couple of years ago at an HCT championship, which again, I believe it was Warrior specifically that Frozen was targeting, but he targeted it with decks that, like, their next best matchup was like 30%, right? Like, he built decks that were 80-90% against Warrior, but 30% at best against everything else. And I feel like Roger finds himself in a similar spot.
Yeah, and we're going to game number 1 now as the players are just doing their mulligan. Roger on the Paladin and Tyler on the Rogue. We can touch on the Rogue in just a minute, but briefly give us a breakdown, if you can, Sol, of this Paladin.
I honestly can't. Okay. Here's what I think Roger has done, right? Roger has Nazari in this deck, which, if you don't know, is a 10-mana dragon that restores both players to full health. I think when Roger added Nazari to his deck, he didn't realize it didn't have the Reno condition on it, because he has so many one-offs in this deck, both because they're just legendaries. He has Undertaker, Kangor's Endless Army, Countess Ashmore, Ziliax, Harrison Jones, High Priest Thickarl, like so many. But then other one of Immortal Prelate, one of Lightforge Blessing, one of Sound the Bells, one of like, there's just everywhere throughout this entire deck.
It would be quicker to name the 2 arms, wouldn't it?
It's absurd, but like, it's a ridiculously greedy version of the Kangor's Endless Army kind of mech paladin that you see on ladder. Doesn't have any of the secret nonsense. He doesn't want to be drawing any cards that cost 1. He's replacing those cards with things like, you know, Cairn Bloodhoof and extra Mechanical Whelps and the Undertaker, just to round it all out. Yeah,
and we'll see where it goes so far. You can see Mechanical Whelp there just drawn, but now Roger, you know, it's not the quickest start deck in the world, I would say. He does have the Gatekeeper there, but most likely, I would imagine just Hero Power Pass is fine. The Bronze Gatekeeper, much better at just adding on extra health to a mech later on to help out with the Endless Army, but he's going to play it and just guard this 1-1. Funnily enough, Evil Miscreant is so good as a card, it would have actually done well if Baku again had not rotated, because it would still farm Paladin. One way or the other as a 1-5.
Yeah.
So even this job now, even though it's just going to be the odd token here and there that Roger's going to create, won't want to use that hero power too much later on in the game, this 1-5 is still just going to get some work done.
Yeah, and that Bronze Gatekeeper, by the way, yet another one-of in Roger's deck.
See now the Vendetta is active because there's a Crystal Smith can go even more healing, or some healing should I say, available for Tyler, but most importantly that Vendetta being live means that he can kill off this Gatekeeper and almost just reset the board.
What I will say is that Roger has done very well to pick up both of his True Silver champions in the early game here, because that's the one thing that this deck is missing to make room for just all these insanely greedy cards that make him so effectively anti-warrior. He's cut away things like Consecration, Wild Pyromancers. You know, there's none of that business that he can use to kind of swing back board states when he loses them, which is why he would appear on the surface to be so unfavored against a lot of the aggressive decks. And another good reason why he ends up banning Zoo out of this series. You know, good luck beating Zoo as a Paladin without Consecration.
It's really interesting to me. It definitely looks worse now that the egg is in hand for Roger, but that Gatekeeper was very interesting play on 3. I get, you know, you've got 3 mana, play a card, but giving some of these mechs taunts when there is no saps in Tyler's list feels like a very powerful thing, because Tyler can, egg comes down, face. Whelp comes down, face. You know, in that window of time, I feel like Roger could just die against this rogue.
I think also, yes, that is fair, but I think Roger's kind of taking that same philosophy and looking at it the other way around, where, you know, if he draws any of his early game cards, he should just play them and try and fight for the board as much as he can, because if he gets to the point where he's playing eggs and whelps and so on and not dying, like, his deck is so insanely greedy that he is just going to be able to run away from it from there.
Again, though, it is going to be a bit of a strange series to follow at home, because if Roger just loses this game, kind of fine. If Roger just loses the next game, as long as it's not versus Warrior, also fine. He can go 0-2 down and still be favored in the matchup, which is what makes this game look very, very strange indeed.
Yes.
And Tyler's Tyler's little doggos just getting the Paladin legendaries. If he had one more, he'd get his own Nazari. Considering maybe just using this trade into Witchy Lackey to actually just make this Miscreant a 4-drop, which more often than not will give Roger like 2 targets that are actually threats to choose from, as opposed to a 3-3 and a 1-3. Okay.
Hey.
Good D 4-drop, I would say.
Yeti back at the World Championship for the first time since Firebat's winning lineup.
Oh, wow.
Next up, Oasis Snapjaw.
If only. If only. But now the Annoy module is actually a big deal because it just completely fixes the issue I was talking about earlier of Tyler maybe being able to just ignore minions like this egg, and it just won't be able to now because the Annoy module is just going to kick in, and then Tyler has to deal with it, and suddenly this could get quite difficult.
It is already looking like it could be an uphill battle here from Tyler. As you say, you know, in terms of Roger losing, all of the non-warrior matchups are kind of just appetizers for the main course of when it comes down to the warrior. If he can pick up wins with these decks that aren't against warrior, like that's actually pretty huge for him because it gives him so much more margin for error when it comes down to, you know, dealing with the oppressiveness of Dr. Boom. If Tyler does get like a nice curve into an early Dr. Boom into one of the warrior matches, of course that can make Roger's life very difficult. So if he is able to get wins through elsewhere, that is a nice buffer for him.
Much if he queues his highest win rate against warrior deck, wins with it against rogue, he's like, no! I should have queued one that has less win rate versus warrior.
Not quite sure that's how that works, but sure, we'll run with it.
Oh, wow, now the Zilliax.
Yeah.
Oof. I'm pretty sure he could even afford to just play the Whelp if he really wanted to. With the kind of sustain he's got going forward.
I would suggest that's a little bit dicey.
I'm not saying he should, I'm saying he could.
Right, but he's in a comfortable position here, and although there are no saps in Tyler's deck list, there are still lackeys in Tyler's deck list, and lackeys can turn into saps or vanishes or whatever else you need them to be.
Yeah, you do mean through Discover spells, and although lackeys are powerful, they don't just say play sap.
They don't just transform into the card
Battle
sap.
cry,
No.
sap an opponent minion. It'll be like, come on, guys. These lackeys are too good.
People aren't saying that now? Or
That's what I mean. We don't need to be any better.
Okay.
Rogues are fine as they are.
Are they? You want to go on the record with that statement?
Mainly because I just would rather them not get any more powerful.
Okay. That clarification was important. Yeah. You're about to have a lynch mob.
Yeah, they can join the queue.
Fair enough.
Underbelly Fence, definitely a card I'm completely undecided about in terms of power level and the way you have to consider building your deck if you're going to run it. Obviously, at this point, 2 mana deal 3 from hand with Rush is nice, but it's a bit of a weird card in the early game. Is a River Croc just good enough at the moment? Yeah,
I mean, Rogue daggers on 2 most of the time anyway, so if you draw it, it's kind of just like you've drawn one of your slower late game cards in your hand, which can happen regardless. It's worth talking about, though, because Tyler's choice of build of the Rogue deck, going for the more Burgle build with the Vendettas and the Fences, some of the cards that immediately go away to make way for that are the Saps. That's some of the first cards that really get cut out, which would, of course, be massively superior in this matchup and against Roger's lineup in general.
Yeah. Definitely a tough call. Rogue being so powerful does not mean the deck is easy to build, especially when you're bringing it to something where you can ban a deck as well, and then the lineup becomes super, super important. But now, for Roger, there is what just reminds me of a Zord on the board now, with the Mech T-Rex. He does still have some options. The True Silver, as you said, the second one, can be used to get some value here. Zilliax is also available for some amazing healing, although doesn't really need the full extent of that heal. It will reset him back to full. And also just add one hell of a Kangal's Endless Army.
I was going to say, yeah.
Maybe that's just the reason.
Yeah, the biggest upside right now to magnetizing things is just that he already has Kangal's Endless Army.
So he would get a 2/9 Divine Shield Egg taunt.
Yeah.
And he would get
11,
this.
10, yeah. Actually use it unmagnetized though, interesting.
Adds up to 3 though, doesn't it?
So he does now put a 3rd mech in the pool, yeah, exactly. And can potentially now get full value out of the Kangals that way if he wants to play it sooner rather than later.
So now there is the pick and the Corsair along with Eviscerate to help clean up a lot of this and get ahead on board. I don't see anything that sticks out that is too much better just because the Eviscerate lines so well versus the 8-4. The pick killing off the Ziliax means that you even hold the 3-3 as a minion that you can keep using and gain the Corsair on the board as well. And if there are things that have been cut, such as, I say cut from a list that no one plays, but Equality, Consecrate, these things aren't really knocking around, then going wide on the board is actually going to be one of the huge benefits against Roger here. Oh, that looks like a cleave turn.
How much of this will you see?
Yeah, I like this a lot, actually. Now that I look at it, there's very little answer to a big bang cleave like this. Apart from a one-of outdoor Peacekeeper, what do you know? Another one-of in the deck for Roger.
Yeah, the only problem that we can see is Roger can just endless army and say, well, my 3 minions are bigger than yours, even with a 10-10.
Yeah, I was going to say, barely.
Overall.
Yeah.
Considering the egg has an 8-8 in it too.
Right.
Oh, I forgot about the Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Huh. Maybe attaching it to the 8-8 was better then. Because then you would have a total of 3.
You keep it at 3. Yeah, very possible.
It's interestingly enough, if you think about it, in some versions, that 8-8 could have just become a Ziliax. And that one-of legendary spell in the deck isn't the most mind-blowing thing in the world for Tyler to deal with. Could have been a little bit scary. No Burglar here, has prep as well as Fan plus this spell to maybe mess around with to help out clearing this board. Or at least creating a gap, a window to just attack with, but with so much healing and sustain in Roger's deck, I don't think you can just ignore minions and go face and guarantee you'll even kill them fast enough.
Tyler digging for desperate measures here, prep a new challenger. That ain't it. Pretty much needed, damage Stegatron in that position to kind of be even somewhat competitive with this board state?
Yeah, I guess so. Or the 4-7?
Sure.
Maybe.
Sure.
Now, options. There's still a lot of power on the board for Tyler. Roger cannot ease up here. And he doesn't have fantastic ways to do this, mainly because of this Divine Shield on the High Spire and Togwaggle.
Yeah.
It's actually a huge problem.
It's very irritating. Again, there's the kind of the natural essence of Roger's deck, where his deck costs so much mana in total, he spends so much mana every turn, he very rarely hero powers. Right. So he doesn't get 1/1s on the board that can do useful things like pop off Divine Shields. He just has huge minions like this, none of which want to really crash into a Divine Shielded Taunt minion.
I actually wondered, I mean, I'm basically learning this, this deck as we go.
Oh,
so
as
I think everyone is, except for Roger maybe, to be honest. But I was wondering whether this was a turn you could afford to play Undertaker. So he gains some death rattle with the popping an 8-8. It's a big minion in itself. And then even if Tyler gets through the wall of this taunted egg, he could just Azari the turn after and have a wider, bigger board. Ended up going with the Blessing of Kings and the True Silver Champion. Probably the most cards he'll play in a single turn all game. 2.
Very possibly, yeah.
So many options.
Can trade with the Van Cleef, which does hurt a little bit, putting it to 3. But most importantly, I think he can pick off this 8-3. Which means at least one of them dies. There'll still be a clean 8-8, but Tyler needs to get these picks going because now he's got 2 in hand and they're not doing anything right now.
Yeah. It is always very scary to equip a Waggle pick when you have a huge Edwin Van Cleef on board, but the fact that it's being traded down to 3 health anyway.
If it becomes, say, even a 6-6 afterwards, if it even survives next turn, then it's still not bad, is it?
Right.
Blood and plunder.
This is pretty wide, and it's going to sound really silly as well, but without a fan of knives and maybe the pick in a couple of turns, it does keep his hand size big. He does keep having resources to go through. That card in hand is a Lightforge Blessing on the far right of Roger's hand. If you don't know what that is, it's 2 mana, give a minion lifesteal, but it also has twin spells, so you can do it twice. Very, very cheap and effective heal for Paladin if you can stick the minions. Whoa! Okay. Again, like, even so, interesting turn. Because Roger could have actually cleared off the Van Cleef.
Well, yeah, he could have killed the Dread Corsair first.
Yes,
which
and then
I guess if he doesn't kill the Dread Corsair first and the Dread Corsair gets bounced, it's then easier for him to trade into the minions that he's worried about anyway.
Right.
So leaving the Dread Corsair there kind of increases his chances. It's interesting. I was just thinking because the hometown crowd here, who are, of course, very much in support of Roger, popped huge for that Edwin Van Cleef being bounced. Which I'm not necessarily sure was like a huge outcome for Roger because it had 3 health anyway. He could have killed it with a True Silver Champion. His hand is full of healing, so that damage doesn't matter. And he had Outdoor Peacekeeper anyway to neutralize it. So I'm not really sure like the result of that turn actually mattered a huge deal to Roger in the grand scheme of things.
well, funnily enough, I actually think if he killed the Dread Corsair, traded off the Cleave, and then bounced either Kangor or Greenskin, it actually would have been better.
Just to
because
stop
the
giving your
weapon's gone.
opponent- Yeah.
Greenskin's 5 mana.
Yeah.
And he needs a weapon equipped.
Yeah.
We can see the second picks in hand, but still, this 8/8 Cleave is actually, I think,
Right.
a bigger deal right now
Right, yeah,
than
I
what the
agree.
previous turn could
No,
be.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And because of the Lightforge Blessing, that even if you face tanked the Van Cleef,
Exactly, yeah, it just doesn't
you
matter.
just heal back up
Your
again.
hand is. I mean, your entire deck is huge minions with high attack, and
Yeah.
your hand is Twin Spell, Give Lifesteal, and restore both heroes to full health. Like
Right.
you can take some damage this game.
Whereas this 8/8 is actually just, for me, a bigger threat right now.
I mean, it's dealt with on board though.
Yeah, I agree. Just gotta look for those small percentages.
You do.
But now,
Perfectly honest, this game has looked rather over for quite some time. So grasping at straws is kind of all we're left with at this point.
and there's still so much more as well. I mean, the single sound the bells would make a big impact, or a final nail in the coffin.
How much impact can you make on a game that you've already won?
I just mean there's still so many good cards that even if Roger somehow lost his board,
Yeah.
would pull him back into it. There's Undertaker. Roger can use these resources quite freely, as this isn't a control mirror. It doesn't mean he has to say, oh, I need the most value out of these 8/8s because I might run out of them at some point.
Right.
Nope. Roger's got more than enough in the bank right now.
Tyler's free to raiding party here uncomboed because he's already drawn both of his waggle picks. He's only got 1 pirate remaining in his deck anyway, apparently. And this needs to be the Omega spell.
Which one?
Which isn't really a bad choice of words, since Omega is now kind of a keyword in
Yeah,
Hearthstone.
I thought you meant a card, and I was like, is there an Omega
This
card that just
spell-
wins the
alright.
game on 10 mana crystals?
That
sort of? 'Cause
spell,
that's what he would need.
that spell needed to be the Alpha and Omega.
There we
Needed to
go.
be the beginning and end of all spells, and it was not available. And that is honestly huge for Roger, because Bellbreaker, the more expensive, more awkward silence card to use, whereas other players in this tournament have chosen to bring up to 2 owls, which are more flexible to weave in there, and of course having multiple copies gives you additional chances if suddenly huge death rattles start getting stacked on top of each other, which Roger's deck is very much want to do. Roger's side, he is going to be running out his Hunter here, having already picked up a win with the Paladin. And Raven, like I said in the intro, this is not just your standard ladder mech hunter.
Yeah, all the standard hunter you'll see in this tournament, actually, that we've been complaining about for the past 24 hours. But yes, it is a control style or control buster mech hunter that it does include some heavier cards. We'll see Undertaker again, potentially, as it is in the list, along with Cairn, which are the big 2 that are going to make this matchup even better for Roger.
Now, this is already a really big talking point for Tyler. because I spoke to him about this matchup, and I know, or this series matchup in general, I know plenty of other people have as well. One of the theories that's been posited is that the only way he wins is to out-tempo his opponent with his warrior deck. So the tempo play here would be to play Omega Assembly on 1, try and find himself something to play, and try and curve out aggressively. And you see that's exactly what he does. A Mega Assembly on 1, Eternium and Rover picked up. He now has a somewhat smooth curve through very, very non-threatening minions, a couple of 1-3s, but then Darius Crowley can come down and potentially start to get some work done. I like this from Tyler. He can't play the conventional game plan, especially since he doesn't have the Dr. Boom opening hand. He knows that he's not necessarily going to be able to fall back on that long-term Boom game plan just yet, so I like the plan to just try and curve out, play some minions, get some pressure going.
Yeah, and this is the impact Roger's lineup has made, I would say, just to the tournament. Because when all of these players have, when the lineups became public, they saw what their opponents were going to be. Right, okay, I can start practicing versus this, what do I ban? When you're against Roger with this lineup, you have to go, how do I even play the game?
Yeah.
It's not just, what's my ban here? Do I do this?
What is Hearthstone and what does it mean?
Yes. How do I even play? And do I have to just start making things up and playing in a completely awkward fashion? And, we see from that Tyler's Eternium Rover now just getting dropped on 2 is not standard. That was not a turn 10 assembly that gets you 3 mechs. That is a turn 1 that gets you something to do that helps with this. And even Roger now dropping down the Spider Bomb, which is going to be pretty low value, but better than nothing.
To be fair, if he'd have waited until turn 10 and then ripped that Omega Assembly, he would have ended up with a pretty disappointing 3 cards in his hand. Turn 10, Eternium Rover, a Goblin Bomb, and some other garbage. I can't even remember what the 3rd card was.
Most importantly, not 3 Omega Devastators.
Yeah. Which can't happen, by the way, Twitch chat.
Sometimes it feels like it does happen, though. See, now, though, interestingly enough, Acolyte of Pain not going down. Maybe he just needs to kill off the Spider Bomb more than anything.
Yeah, I think dropping an Acolyte of Pain into an existing Spider Bomb when your opponent has, just Death Rattle activators is very scary. You see already, how fragile the idea of curve out with Control Warrior is, right? He's just going to be so far behind already.
And a huge note that we've not touched on.
Roger just trading his Spider Bomb up 1-for-1 with Tyler's 1-drop. This game is already so bizarre.
It is in the pool for 9 lives, though, as well, so that's something to consider. But I will just point out as well, one of the big problems is suddenly when most of your opponent's minions and mechs, Dinomatic becomes not a very good card.
Correct.
So even that as the turn 5 that's normally so scary against Control Warriors, because that Dinomatic almost just always just destroys everything you have, that won't really work versus Roger. So it basically becomes a 5-mana 3/4 with Rush if you're lucky. Oh, well, Darius is dead. Don't see any big reason for Roger not to just snipe this off. It's one of the few minions that might give him some trouble if left unchecked.
Yep.
Especially since one Spider Bomb is already done and dusted.
Agreed.
Okay, turn 5 Omega Assembly. Let's go. I think a weapons project into the Acolyte and actually tap the bomb with the weapon. It negates the bomb, if the bomb's full effect on the Acolyte, and it means Tyler can play something this turn. And you can always kill off the bomb next turn, even if the second fireworks is played.
If you just commit to doing the same thing, commit to hitting the bomb twice with the weapons project, just don't play the Acolyte this turn.
But then you can use the project to kill the 2-1 next turn.
Sure.
Because something happens with the Acolyte, right? Oh, Shield Slam Acolyte. Okay. Scary. He does have BGH to kill some of these big mechs that might come out in a little bit later out of these whelps. But still, it's a brave play.
Oh, the Leok! Why you do this?
Hey, that's Suffer though. Those perfect rolls.
To be fair, none of them were bad, right? Like the 4-4 taunt is probably the worst one in that situation because Tyler can find some way to kill the 4-4 and then find a value trade with his Acolyte. But
That's what I mean, just the exact one Lee-up, one Hoffer.
You can just see how miserable this task is for Tyler. I think he said that, you know, over 20 or more sets, his Warrior was able to win one game in this matchup. Oh, sorry, in this series matchup. And I think now, you know, Tyler has to accept that his tempo game plan is not working out. That's why you're seeing this Omega Assembly being held. And as sad as it is, he kind of has to divert back to the old plan of Control Warrior of trying to outlast the opponent, which, you know, works incredibly rarely against this deck, but he just has no option to continue tempoing minions. It's not like he drew an Omega Devastator that he could just play as a Yeti on turn 4. You know, he just ran out of steam.
I will say as well, we are looking at an extremes of what I'm about to talk about because of Roger's lineup.
Yeah.
But half the player pool said people are crazy to bring Control Warrior over Bomb Warrior because it's so much more one way and can't do well against some other matchups, some of the weaker matchups, that it can be targeted, and it just doesn't overall perform as well as Bomb Warrior can. And yes, as I said, this is an extreme version of it because of Roger's lineup, but still rings true.
So,
okay, if this was Bomb Warrior,
yes,
it would be better
it
for
would
Tyler.
still lose.
It would have a much higher chance of winning.
Why though? Because okay, you have a few more minions, right?
Because you can play a tempo
You have
game.
like a 3-3 and a 5-5 that you can play, but you still don't have a curve. You don't curve out and pressure the opponent. You're not an aggro deck.
I mean, you can play 3-3 on 3 into Weapon on 4 into Bomb on 5.
That is exactly one of cards in your deck that you can play. In the same way, like Tyler could have played Acolyte of Pain into a Mega Devastator into Dynomatic and didn't.
Okay, well, you have Alex too.
Sure, right? But
All I'm saying is there is more stuff to do early game to put some level of pressure onto Roger.
sure. But your pressure then runs out and you're playing against decks that are so greedy that they draw 0 cards. So your bombs then have 0 impact on the game because they so rarely get drawn. In the meantime, your opponent's making enormous boards of minions that you can't deal with because you're cutting removal from your deck to shuffle cards into your opponent's deck that do nothing.
Then you play Boom and then stuff happens, right?
It's the dream of every Bomb Warrior player. I'm convinced everyone that thinks Bomb Warrior is good just draws like Elic into bombs into Boom every game.
I mean, that's just called being good at the game, Sol.
Apparently.
No weapons project to actually kill off this this Huff is interesting. Just going to choose to armor up. And suddenly,
I wonder what this does.
things start getting silly. There's Archmage, Vargoth, and 9 lives as well in hand, which is a spicy combo in itself.
Which is nonsense. The fact that there's a Vargoth in this deck as well is
Greed.
blowing my mind.
Let
It's like,
the
yeah,
greed
I'll just play
consume
9
you.
lives and pick the option I want. And then you know what? You can just pick one Vargoth. You're good. You just pick. It's fine.
Yep. If you only put good ones in your deck, then you're fine, right? Just armor up. Obviously not going to go for the Warpath to give Roger a much beefier minion to hit him in the face with in the following turn. And also there are two the firework techs have been played, so there isn't much of a chance for this whelp to actually generate even more 7/7s than it would naturally.
Sure.
So very, very safe leave there. Vargoth 9.
You just want to see it. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, also, it's just, I think, the best turn.
I don't make mistakes. I bury them.
I mean, Undertaker's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that this is actually just a stronger turn, right? Like, you haven't seen a brawl from your opponent, and this is... Well, okay, he whiffed on the... Okay, I guess that none of them have died yet, right? He's only fireworks tech the mechanical whelp so far? Yeah, okay. But yeah, this is a more resistant board to brawl than just, like, 9 livesing a bunch, I guess.
Your magic shall not save me.
And there you go. Those are all Tyler's good tech cards in the matchup. All of them.
And we see already then, Roger, instant nod. Right, okay.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Done.
Yeah.
I will play the rest of my many, many, many big Death Rattle minions now to cause some problems. And we can see already now, there's the Vargoth, there's the 9 lives, and sparks are going to start flying as he doesn't have to worry about silence. He doesn't have to worry about Big Game Hunter anymore. Dr. Vargoth.
Let's see what he chooses. Oh, good boy.
I mean, even a spider bomb wouldn't have been horrible there. At least now, though, here's a nice big brawl that for Tyler. He hopes will do something like 177 up, okay? He does have Omega Devastator now. He does have Omega Assembly on 10 mana. He has the double weapons project to sort of stall for time in terms of armor gain. And now there's a Ziliax. So he didn't get steamrolled.
Right.
And now it's stage 2 of the game. Of right, let me draw Dr. Boom and try and stabilize and stay on top. But now there's Ken. There's so many more waves of minions that Tyler actually has to deal with. Go full roleplay and go bomb toss. Get the mechs cooking.
The problem Tyler's going to have now is that even though it looks like he's in a reasonable position, like he can take this board back quite effectively this turn, like, yeah, this Omega Assembly is going to land him some mechs, but without Dr. Boom, these mechs are not removal.
Yes.
He needs to be able to turn these into tempo plays. Sorry,
I beg to differ.
I misspoke. I'm so sorry. He has a 1/1 Spark with Rush.
Removal.
Yeah.
Will say, though, as well, just a nod to some other cards that are yet to come for Roger. Zul'jin will redo those 9 lives and such and create just as many problems late game again.
Yeah. And since Roger is now casting Unleash the Beast as well, like Zul'jin actually functions as refill for him as well, like actually gives him gas in hand because of the twin spell effect. Like it starts to get
that
very,
plus 9
very
lives
silly.
is just... Like, literally, the only thing holding Roger back now is a theme throughout his decks, is that the mana cost of it is such a high curve that he can't do multiple things in a turn. It's just like 1 minion a turn, 1 big minion a turn, 1 big minion a turn. This is to the extent he can do with 9 lives. Now already, Tyler just running out of gas. Oh, never mind. Draws one of the best cards in the game.
But you can see, clear as day, the difference between Omega Devastator on 10 mana and Omega Devastator on 10 mana in Dr. Boom form.
Yeah.
This dealing 14 here, at least being able to allocate the damage, 10 into the Mechanical Whelp and then 4 into the 5/4.
And the difference is having to commit Ziliax as well. That's just a big deal.
Yep. Tyler is winning the board though. And Roger's hand is incredibly slow and incredibly clunky right now.
Nope.
Never mind.
Here comes a big axe.
Here comes a big axe and a big turn for Roger. As I mentioned earlier, Zul'jin, just watch what happens. Ursatron, okay, not fantastic. Did draw the Ziliax though. But here comes double Animal Companion, the twin spelled. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm just listening to the crowd right now. They're having a really good time just watching all this happen.
Okay, I just want to draw your attention to something here.
Yeah.
That was not the best Zul'jin by far that could have happened.
Nope.
Roger has 3 Mechanical Whelps, a Cairn, a Ziliax, a Unleash the Beast, and many, many other things in his hand and in his deck. It wasn't even the best Zul'jin.
Oh no, but he burned a Mechanical Whelp. How can he possibly win with only the 3 he has in his hand?
Pretty easily, Sol.
Oh, okay.
Pretty easily.
Okay.
Now, even this bomb. Spider Bomb's just going to be able to deal with Geddon pretty easily. He could literally play bomb and pass, and he'd still be fine.
That is kind of funny.
It's true, though,
He
right?
does take 7 damage for the sake of it, as opposed to just shooting his own bomb, but...
But he could just play bomb and pass and still be fine.
I'm not arguing with you. He definitely could make that play and still win this game.
He could just remove Geddon straight away and save the bomb, maybe for fear of a bigger mech coming out maybe later. If you've got to imagine, if Tyler then draws Dr. Boom exactly, then discovers the mech, I keep forgetting, the new legendary that pulls a minion out as well. the 7-9. You know, if Tyler does exactly those things, Roger might be in some form of trouble.
Sure.
So he could consider saving the bomb. He chooses not to. He's actually instead going to do a completely different play that both of us didn't say, which is just use the Zilliax.
I mean, I think this is always the more likely option. We were discussing the Spider Bomb being amusing, but I don't think it was ever a good play, as opposed to just leaving it there in play to threaten the next minion coming down from Tyler, because really, what real removal does Tyler have that he wants to throw at a 2-2 right now? I think he has a copy of Warpath left, I guess, which would make his turn like Warpath go.
Second brawl.
Roger's pretty much okay with, yeah, exactly. It's not exactly a great board state.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question.
Go on.
If Tyler draws Elysiana at any time before boom, is he just slamming it?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Genuine question as well, because I just wonder if he can afford not to, because he just might not draw boom and die.
I mean, I think if he plays Elysiana, if he plays Elysiana before he's dealt with all of Roger's things, he just dies anyway. There's no way that Elysiana builds him a deck good enough to deal with a handful of Death Realm minions.
What if every discovers a silence?
I give up. Guys, I give up. I honestly, this is my retirement from Hearthstone casting.
I've done it!
I've officially had enough of these inane questions.
Roger now just has to pick a card that glows green and play it. As I feel like Tyler's pretty much just been dismantled this game.
Yeah. But to be fair, the relevancy of the Elysiana is that Roger does have to get kind of the job done with what he's left with now, right? Like, his Undertaker is gone. That's one of his huge power plays. His Zul'jin is gone. That's another one of his huge power plays.
9 lives are gone.
And his 9 lives, of course, have gone and then been recast by Zul'jin and are therefore gone again. So he's kind of just left with what he's left with now. He does need to kill Tyler with the remainder of his deck, which is not difficult, let me be clear.
Funnily enough, a bit of a spicy card that you may not expect. There is a Dire Frenzy in this list.
Yeah.
So he can play the Unleash the Beast into Dire Frenzy to shuffle some more in at a very high value.
Sure.
I mean, there aren't many other beasts in the deck to do it on Sol.
Nope.
The Spring Paws.
Uh-huh.
And Unleash the Beast. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose Animal Companions,
Yes.
technically.
Yeah. We've seen Tyler pretty much the whole game holding on to those weapon projects for as long as he could. He was forced to play the first one, but the second one he did hold on to long term, to the point where he was just really looking for that Harrison-Jones combination since he was so badly out of gas. It hasn't really found him the immediate answers he needs in terms of brawls and such, but it has found him that Dr. Boom, but probably too little too late at this point.
Yeah. Right about now, the fact that Dr. Boom pretty much takes a whole turn to even just play, and then it might not be good afterwards, because yes, there's one mech in hand, but what's after that?
Right.
It might just be a little bit too slow. Even Roger using the Spring Paw to clear off the 3-1 as opposed to just using the hero power, saying, well, this 1-1 Rush Beast isn't going to do much versus 1 extra damage to face.
Right.
Or 2 extra, I guess, because he couldn't have done it anyway.
Yeah, if Warpath comes down, it just dies. If Dynamatic comes down, it's one of the few minions that actually gets hit and dies. If Brawl comes down, it's a bad outcome for him.
He still has the links just in case he randomly wants to Dire Frenzy instead of an Unleash the Beast Wyvern.
That was something I was thinking about, because Unleash the Beast is definitely a card that you can be forced to play, right? Like, there can be a board state where it's so good to play a 5/5 Rush minion that you just have to play it. And if that happens a couple of times over the next couple of turns and then he draws the Dire Frenzy, he might end up out of Beasts. But yeah, you just get the links to sit back on anyway.
Yeah,
You've
whatever.
got 2 Unleash the Beasts in your hand. Like, how likely is this to happen?
One of them is Twin Spelled as well, so one of them is 2. And
Oh, really? Is one of them still a Twin Spell?
Yeah, the one you got from, well, that was a natural draw, the second one, I think. The first one was from Zul'jin.
Okay.
Funnily enough, the Dynamatic will just snipe Ken on this board. So at least gets rid of level 1.
This is actually, okay, this is actually really cute. Roger is pushing Tyler to fatigue, which may seem weird because we know that Tyler is an Elysiana deck, right? Why would he need to push him to fatigue when he's not going to fatigue because of Elysiana? He wants to push Tyler to a fatigue state in a position like this, where he has a bunch of pressure on the board. So if Tyler wants to play his Elysiana, then he has to play it facing down a ton of damage from the opponent. It's actually pretty smart on Roger's side.
Yeah. PED. Post-Elysiana damage.
Exactly.
Very common phrase. Just a note, though, let's just talk about these.
I just want to clarify, there is another meaning of that, which we're not accusing Roger of in any way.
Actually, don't know what that is, so I can't accuse of someone I don't know what it is. I'll be completely honest, no clue what you're talking about. But yeah,
I'm just protecting your legal interests, right?
Oh, okay. I'm genuinely innocent. I meant Elysiana. I don't know what I've said.
I know you're very worried right now. It's not that big a deal.
Okay, cool. Woo! Sweat wiped off the brow. Let's continue. We'll note the first pick for Tyler was Brawl, so he's got 2 more Brawls in the bank now.
Okay.
Very, very important, actually.
Groms.
Yeah, and then Spirit of the Rhino.
Okay.
We won't talk about that one that much.
Okay.
It's kind of a whiff. There we go.
Sultharaz, Spirit of the Rhino, Devastate, and Groms alongside the Brawls.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Thank you, observers. Definitely not bad Elysiana at all for this situation.
Pretty good.
Really not bad.
Pretty
It could have
good.
been a lot worse.
But, you know, it goes back to the point where we had our little falling out earlier where, you know, that is a really good Elysiana, right? But
Yes.
it's still a bad deck. You know, that's not a deck that you build in your deck builder and go, oh, yeah, I'm happy with this. Like, let's go. So, you know, you can't really expect Elysiana to do too much for you a lot of the time.
I've got a question for you.
Go on.
I'm embarrassed I don't know the answer, because I feel like I should.
Go on.
If Brawl hits this board,
Yeah.
and let's just say the Ursatron lives,
Okay.
do the Death Rattle summon in order of the order they're on the board?
I think so, yeah. In
Okay.
the order they were played.
Yes, well, okay, but not the order they're placed.
Oh, no, I think the order they were put into play is the order that they
Okay.
happened. Yeah.
Just because it's interesting, just with the Brawl into Super Collider, you
Sure.
could potentially snipe 2 7/7s with the Collider afterwards. I was just wondering, because it's something I've actually just never really considered. Because you don't see a board of this many Death Rattles that often, to be honest.
Right.
Okay, like I said, though, the snipe specifically on the Cairn, that's like the weak point.
Yeah.
The Dynamatic finally had his day. No matter what happens, that card does end up being good.
Take that Cairn out your deck. It sucks against Warrior. Just get sniped by Dynamatic.
You tell me you're trying to beat Warrior and you
Yeah.
put a Cairn in your mech deck?
Jeez.
So now, though, you know, funnily enough, there isn't a way for these tutus to be procced if Tyler just never plays a minion.
Tyler's entire deck is Brawls. That's kind of my issue.
No, yeah, I'm just saying Tyler can maybe hold off,
Sure.
depending on
Yeah,
what these
yeah,
hero...
yeah.
He doesn't have to just snap removal, snap removal,
Yeah,
snap
yeah,
removal.
Interesting in terms of Super Collider positioning as well that Roger keeps separating these tutus. He doesn't want them to clash with each other because of like Super Collider Brawl as a 1-2 punch, for example, can then be a pretty effective board clear.
Right. Wonder if actually Warpath Brawl go for the Dream?
Uh-huh. Wondering how much stock Tyler is putting into Warpathing his Grom, or whether he just wants to wait for the right hero power to go with it to activate it.
To do what, though?
I mean, push damage, end the game. He's going to have to at some point.
Sure. I mean, if he Warpath Brawls now, though, he could end up just facing down a 3-3.
Sure.
Or 3-1, should I say, if we're going to be technical.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, at this point, Tyler might have to do a bit of a risky biscuit play
That's fair.
to win the game. Because we can see Roger's actually not got much, considering Tyler's draws are actually decent.
Yeah.
Along with Collider, along with potential lucky hero powers.
Yeah. The problem is that even though he's a few cards ahead in Fatigue, he'll probably end up being behind in Fatigue just because of the health deficit that he's facing down. He will probably die first, so he is going to have to look for some kind of way to end the game.
It's very important about how Dr. Boom decides to press his buttons,
Right.
basically.
And what actually might come into play, tiny chance of coming into play, is I believe that's an explosive trap that Roger played a few
It is.
turns ago, which means potentially... Never mind.
Yep.
Forget all that.
He gives up.
I was going to set up some miracle world where both of Tyler's Grogs got to do max damage because the first one runs into an explosive trap. But we were clutching at straws, obviously, and mercifully we've been put out of our misery. And the inevitable conclusion that we've been trying to avoid talking about for the last 40 minutes has occurred, and the Warrior has lost.
Are you okay, Sol?
I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
You seem stressed, friend. But I'll tell you who probably, doesn't feel that stressed at the moment is Roger, because that was very one-sided. And if your opponent has Warrior, and that's what your decks look like, great.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
The overall reason why Tyler is so overwhelmingly unfavored in this series is that he also kind of has this slow, control-y mid-range Shaman as well, which doesn't really have a win condition in it.
Right.
And that's a huge problem because, yeah, okay, you can buy time against the Mage. You Hex a Mountain Giant, you Earthshock a Twilight Drake, you bought yourself some time, but then time to do what? Eventually, you're going to run out of time. You're going to run out of removal options unless, I'll just preempt you throwing this in there, unless Hagatha gives you 15 Hexes and 27 Earthshocks.
I would never suggest such a ridiculous idea.
Then you're going to be in trouble because Roger's Mage deck just goes on and on and on forever. It's weird because it's actually kind of his most conventional deck in his lineup. It's something that's at least the most similar to something that has been played on ladder at some point. This is a very early build of the deck with the extra greed of the power of creation. Then he's just got Hexlord Malakras thrown in there as well.
Yeah, I'll give you just a quick highlight reel as the players' mulligans have been finished, but this is your usual bigger mage. Apart from it has Barista Lynchen, which bounces, creates copies of.
Battlecry, add your Battlecries on the board.
There you go.
Yeah.
It also plays 2 Unseen Saboteurs that you saw in the opening hand, but he did throw them away to reduce the chances of these Hexes and these Earthshocks and such spells getting value. But yeah, Hexlord Malakras will give him the hand again from his opening hand, and also Alexstrasza and Calico, so extremely greedy. And like I said, even if Hexes were aimed perfectly, I do not think they're enough to beat this.
All right, so bad news. Roger cast Book of Spectres and discarded one of his Power of Creations, which is a big chunk of value missing from his deck. Good news, he's drawn his Hexlord Malakras, and I believe that Power of Creation was in his opening hand, so that will replace the one that he lost.
All part of the plan. So the Book of Spectres, though, let's see what happens. There is the Conjurer's Coin that he definitely wants to dodge, and I think that was one.
That was.
Oh, so one Conjurer's Coin, one Power of Creation, bust. But a whole lot of cards and a whole lot of refill regardless, I think is key here.
Shall we make a storm?
Turn the head into...
Coin draws a one-mana
Lightning
overspell.
Bolt, yeah.
He coins there
That's nice.
because he knows that the Spirit of the Frog is going to draw him a one-mana overload spell. He can then get this Thunderhead value. Finds his way through to the Witch's Brew as well. Crucially for Tyler, he does have that Hagatha scheme ticking away in hand for him, up to 3 at this point, which means if Roger does not hurry up with his first huge board state, then that Hagatha scheme might just be big enough to take care of it.
Yeah, also as well, a lot of the time, Witch's Brew, especially Tyler running 2 of them, doesn't get as much value versus Mage unless you pair it with exactly Hagatha's scheme, because often you take so much damage per turn versus the Mage anyway, if you were under threat enough to brew, that it's not, it might buy you half a turn to 1 turn worth of damage, so it would really need to be paired with that scheme to be able to clear the board, and then just heal up for 8 might be worth more.
I'm quite surprised by the double Witch's Brew in this deck from Tyler. I'm wondering whether how much of it is that he just wanted to have additional 2-mana spells for the Frog cycle. Spirit, we haven't really covered. Like, Spirit of the Frog is, in a lot of decks, if you build them correctly, essentially a 3-mana Gadgetzan Auctioneer with Stealth, which is absurd.
It's a good card.
So yeah, when you play a spell, the Frog then draws a spell of the next incremental cost. So you play a 1 spell, you draw a 2. If you play a 2 spell, you draw a 3, and so on. So Tyler playing double Witch's Brew maybe as some kind of nod to that engine, but I personally feel like Witch's Brew is one of the most overrated cards in the new set. A lot of people kind of like, wow, this is insane. I was like, well, you realize we've just had Healing Rain for a long time, right? Which healed for a lot more for a fraction of the mana that you have to spend. on Witch's Brew.
I think it's one of those cards that it's good it exists because it enables certain decks, but it's not the busted thing, it's not the broken thing, it's just that the deck would be worse without it, but it doesn't build the deck at all.
Yeah, I think in most control decks you can play one copy of it because there are situations where it's fantastic. And control decks can afford to carry one-off copies of situations.
Especially because a lot of the time you float mana in a control deck, right? So like being able to just fill out, even just cast it twice, that's 4 mana heal 8, just not so bad for a 1 card. But getting back to the game though, Roger's still got tons of value in hand, almost limitless to be completely honest at this point. But Tyler, again, you look at the removal and then you line it up, a removal for each minion that Roger can make. It just doesn't get there, does it? Not even close.
Yeah, Tyler's not going to win this by just removing all of Roger's stuff and pushing towards fatigue. He's going to win this by getting so far ahead on tempo through drawing his deck so much faster that he then goes, big into Kragwa the Frog, into Swamp Queen Hagatha, and then into Shudderwock, and tries to make a board of his own that Roger isn't able to deal with. Because let's remember, we can extol the virtues of how good this mage is at generating huge board states of their own, which they absolutely are. The one thing that they absolutely can't do is clear board states from the opponent. They are terrible at it.
Especially Roger's build. There's the Scale Worms and a Zilliax, and that's about as reactive as it's getting, to be honest, in form of having any actually decent board control.
Ooh, that's a yikes. Was that an 8-drop coming out for a 4/4? Yeah.
Funnily enough, he could bounce it with the Barista, because it is a battle cry 4/4. This deck's got so much value when you think about it. I genuinely think, though, the outcome for this, Tyler, when you talk about how Tyler wins, I think so much of it is going to be on Swamp Queen Hagatha.
Yeah.
Because you can make some pretty busted combos, and then the fact that Shudderwock can help along with maybe doing something similar again might just be what needs to happen, to be honest. Soul the Murlocs.
Uh-huh. Tell me more.
No, he didn't go for it, though.
I was going to say, what's Soul of the Murloc's going to do?
Well, if you said you want to generate a board, then it makes the board a little bit stickier,
See,
and then you get Bloodlust from Swamp Queen Hagatha.
Okay, all right, now we're talking. Now we've got a plan.
Look, you have to stretch for plans in matchups like this. So.
Honestly, once you got that far, I was like, all right. That was only 37% insane, as opposed to the 72 that you normally operate at.
Why did you pick such random numbers?
Because it would be incredibly coincidental if a human being was just a round number insane all the time. That's ridiculous.
That would be insane.
Exactly. That would
so maybe that's why I should be a round number.
That would be at least 87% insane.
Which is nearly 100.
That's almost half. Unseen Saboteur card we haven't really talked about from Roger's deck. It's one of the other weird inclusions that he has in this mage. Struggling to see like a massive impact that it can have currently on Tyler's deck, but if Tyler does fall back on kind of one of those Stormbringer or Bloodlust outs, like either from a Hagatha or from from Hagatha or from Haunting Visions, I guess would be the outcomes, then Unseen Saboteur can try and shut that down.
I actually disagree. I think it's just a good card to play on curve in a lot of situations.
Against Shump.
It soaks a Hex. Who cares?
Sure.
It makes him play...
but you have then played a 6-mana 0/1 at that point.
But in this matchup, what's Tyler going to punish you with?
Yeah, Walking Fountain, Swamp Queen Hagatha.
Again, a scheme too early?
Sure, no, that
a Witch's Brew, a random lightning bolt. I think it's just a good pick.
Okay.
It's obviously got way more value, I would say, in Warrior, or against Warrior, should I say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, picking off some of these spells could be pretty good.
Yeah, of course, the idea, if you're against Warrior and you just get them to Brawl or Shield Slam or whatever else, like, it's just kind of G. Once they're down a removal against your
Omega
deck,
Assembly, not on 10.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, ha-ha! You get the mech that's the 2/4 need to cast a spell to attack.
Yeah.
But, like, honestly, I'm not saying it's the best turn in the world, but if you just look at this board and you could play the Unseen Saboteur, well, maybe that's just a win. It's a bad board for you. You've got so much value in hand.
Roger
just get the spells out.
You didn't need that,
Here we go.
did you?
And it's going to be the scheme for 7.
Uh-huh. This didn't look like a good turn for Roger.
I think it's fine.
I'm unclear on to why we think this is a good thing.
Because now there's only one scheme left in the deck.
Okay. But you don't have the board, and you're mage, and you're terrible at recovering the board.
Khadgar, Power of Creation, disagrees.
Sure.
Also, just roaster into Conjurer's Calling. I think doing it before turn 10 with this hand seems fine.
Okay.
Because you can even expect Tyler to have the second one because he's pretty deep in his deck.
Yeah.
But has he had, that one was what, 7? Like, has he had a second one for longer? And if it's less than that, well, okay, he has to wait even longer to clear a big board.
This Ooze is getting played as well, right?
I don't see why not.
But yeah, going back to it, I think explicitly because he has Khadgar in his hand, I'm okay with it. Okay. Because Khadgar is one of the kind of bootleg ways that you can recover board, just by making a board way too big than your opponent over the top of it. So I guess it's reasonable in that scenario.
Small note as well, just so people know. 1 second, let's just watch. Wind Fury Harpies. Ooh. Just to note there, Kragwa was played and the scheme was not given back because it wasn't
spells you played on your last
exactly.
turn.
I just want to point that out. It's an interaction people probably haven't really seen.
Yeah.
Or most likely haven't.
It's always nice unpacking the magical box of Hearthstone coding to discover what's going to happen.
Yep.
I wonder.
And how those I did say the Harpies mainly because I saw Wind Fury and was like, awesome. But the safeguards now are just, this almost locks Tyler out of his niche outs because there's just so much to punch through.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about the safeguard. I think they are just the best on board, just being taunt minions. Fantastic. Right. Roger should know that Tyler got himself a Hex back, so if Tyler decides that no more Kalecgos, then cool. No big deal. But the thing I wonder about is that the things that are going to be left behind on board are kind of taking up a little bit of unnecessary board space for Roger if Tyler can afford to leave them there.
Yeah, I wonder, I guess my question is, if Tyler leaves them there, then what does Tyler do to win? Because he has to remove them at some point.
Sure.
And then Roger goes, thank you.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just a note, actually, I did briefly touch on Crowd Roaster earlier. No other dragons in hand, actually, so it can't. Its battle cry cannot go off. Which means just one option is reduced.
I feel like this is the turn to say go for Roger.
Malachos.
Like, this just feels like the Khadgar turn to me, because you've seen one scheme get used. The second scheme, if it's not in hand already, will be drawn very soon and start building up. So for me, this is the turn to make the game-winning board that your opponent cannot deal with. Roger sees it exactly the same way. Just going to try and get himself a big old pile of Death Wings. Close enough.
Okay. Now the big question is, Roger got rid of the scheme that would have been big enough to clear this board.
Yep,
I want to point that out with the Saboteur.
Absolutely correct. It would have been exactly 9 this turn, I believe.
And I believe Tyler's scheme that he has in hand is not 9. I think it's like 5?
4.
Oh, 4, sorry. Oh, good head count. I like it. Fair play. I'll give you that one. But yeah, I mean, that's... Roger may have won the game regardless of that outcome, but that Saboteur did work, Sol.
Yep, no argument. It sure did.
Suddenly, Tyler just plays Shudder Walk and hope it does that thing where it used to win games when you played it.
That ain't it.
Sorry, I just felt the low power of that Shudder Walk deep in my soul right there.
Alexstrasza off the top is going to end the series.
Roger just making...
This works too, I guess.
Either way, the series is... I was like, wait, no!
Whoa. Does that work? 14, 16, 30? No, Ziliax 16. Yeah, no, Ziliax is lethal. Ziliax ping is also lethal.
Okay.
Yeah.
That looks like it's all going face to me, Sottle, and Roger's lineup had its first test and it passed with flying colors, 3-0 over Tyler. And the big question now is Roger just going to stomp through this group, beating up on the Control Warriors?
Well, let's contextualize this a bit, right?